Well, it's finally happened. It's been a good year for Sam & Max fans as the final season of the Sam & Max trilogy has finally been given the remaster treatment, and I couldn't be happier. With the amount of work that was put into each season, such as improving the models, the inclusion of better lighting, and adding additional environment pieces to the scenes, I felt like I was playing through each season for the first time all over again. I think everyone will agree that out of all the seasons that were getting remastered, The Devil's Playhouse was the most anticipated season that everyone was waiting for. It's definitely the one that stands out the most compared to the first two seasons. The story is more grounded, the gameplay is really fun with you being able to control Max with his psychic abilities. I felt like Season 3 just had more of an identity of its own. There were a lot of memorable moments that I enjoyed playing through, and this season had some of the most interesting characters that you get to interact with. I will have to be honest to say that even with all of these great things that the third season had, and all the praise that it was getting from fans who claimed this to be the best season of the entire series, it wasn't my favorite season. At first. The main reason for that was the ending. Now, I know it's silly to say that I didn't like a game because of how it ended. I used to be someone who only liked happily ever after endings. It was rare where there was a video game or movie or TV show that had an unhappy ending that I actually enjoyed. That was the case to this ending in The City That Dares Not Sleep, where it has this somewhat bittersweet ending, and I'll go over the details in a little bit. Every time I played The Devil's Playhouse and get to the last cutscene, I would always think to myself, is this a good ending? Compared to the first two seasons that had a finale that I was able to accept and move on, the finale for Season 3 has always been stuck with me for so many years. I always thought to myself, what is it about this ending that sticks out to me? What is this emotion that I'm feeling that I can't really explain? It wasn't until the remaster was released where after I finished playing through the season, I had to sit down and think about what this finale meant to me. After writing down my thoughts and putting together this video essay, I came to the conclusion that this is actually a really good ending. For me, it was one of those endings that I didn't like at first, but after putting some thought into it and trying to dissect the symbolism behind it was when I started to appreciate the finale even more. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. I'll be talking about the season finale while going over some examples from previous episodes and seasons, and I'll be sharing my thoughts as to why I think this ending was good. I would also like to encourage viewers to leave a comment on their thoughts on the ending to The Devil's Playhouse. One of my biggest regrets is that I never discovered the Sam & Max series sooner, so unfortunately I missed out on the discussions that were posted on the Telltale Games forums after each episode release. So if you have any thoughts of your own that you would like to share, please leave a comment below and I would be more than happy to read it. So, with all that out of the way, let's move on to the video. So just to recap what happened in the events of the season finale, Max becomes an eldritch demon god that is terrorizing the city due to his psychic powers getting out of control after his fight with Charlie Hotep. Sam forms a rescue team to go inside of Max to get rid of the dark dimensional tumor in order to return Max to normal and save the city. However, at the very last moment, Max gets impaled by a Maimtron that's carrying a bomb, and in his final moments, Max sacrifices himself to save everyone by teleporting to Skunkape's ship, which unfortunately leads to his demise. We then return to Mama Bosco's lab and learn that there is a chance to clone Max from the bit of DNA that Sam has in his inventory. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen due to Max's complicated DNA structure. We then go into credits with Sam walking to the city and to the harbor where he stares off into the Statue of Liberty, the last place we saw Max before he transformed into a giant. Just then, the time-traveling elevator from Season 2 appears behind Sam and we see Max from past timeline. The duo reunite and walk off into the city to continue their lives as crime fighters, or they go into the elevator to continue their adventures beyond time and space, depending on which ending you received. Now, upon first viewing, I was a little conflicted on what to think about this ending. I mean, one way to look at this is that this is a happy ending, since Sam and Max are together again and get to continue their adventures. On the other hand though, there is this elephant in the room where even though we do end up getting Max back, he isn't our Max. He isn't the same Max that has been by our side since Season 1, so when the game ends with what seems like past Max replacing present Max, it just felt off. Over the years after my first playthrough of this season, every time I came back to this ending, I would think, what is it about this ending that just doesn't sit right with me? What am I not understanding? One main question that came to mind was, why did Max need to die? Why couldn't the season go with an ending where Sam is able to rescue Max? Well, to answer this question, I had to look at the themes for the previous two seasons and compare it to the theme for Season 3. The themes for the first two seasons were mostly just centered around the conflicts that were occurring within the city, such as where in Season 1, Sam and Max are saving the world from the influence of Hugh Bliss, and in Season 2, Sam and Max are solving cases that requires them to go beyond time and space. The first two seasons felt more like a villain of the week kind of gimmick, where in each episode, Sam and Max have to defeat the main villain for the episode, and when you get to the season finale, the mastermind of the season is revealed and you have to defeat them. There really wasn't any other themes that I felt were present within these two seasons. For season 3, however, The Devil's Playhouse, there were two themes that I felt were present. The first was, again, the main conflict that was occurring during the season. Max discovers that he has psychic powers, and he needs to use this newfound gift to defeat an extraterrestrial ape and characters that are practicing the dark arts from the dark dimension. The other theme is Sam and Max's friendship. Now, I'm not saying that their friendship was not present in the first two seasons, it's just that it wasn't really emphasized as much. From the very first scene that these two share, you can immediately tell what kind of friendship that they have, and you see more examples of this during your playthrough. These seasons don't really stress the importance of their friendship, however, and I believe it is something that is very noticeable in season 3. This season really puts our heroes to the test to see how far they would go for each other, and it also shows the effect it has on them when that friendship is threatened. So with all this information that I gathered, it brought me to another main question. How important is Sam and Max's friendship? Well, let's look at episode 3, They Stole Max's Brain.
Max? Little buddy? No, 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 no! No!
What happened?
Hey! What happened to Max? Talk!
When Sam finds Max with his brain completely removed, he switches from the friendly good cop personality that we are familiar with to this scary noir version of himself. He then goes around the city and rusts up any potential suspects that can give him clues as to where his little buddy's at. Now, there have been moments in past seasons where Max has been in danger. For example, there was the time he was captured by Brady Culture, or when his Bliss was separated by Hugh Bliss, and then Sam would have to go and rescue Max. But he mostly remained calm during these moments. He never had that personality shift to use on the villains to rescue Max, and that's mostly because he knew where Max was. He knew that he was fine, somewhat, and the only thing he has to worry about was how to save him. Now, in They Stole Max's Brain, Sam doesn't know where Max's brain is at. He has no leads as to where it could be or who might have it, and there's this possibility that Max might actually be dead. So, as a last resort, Sam becomes this persona where he needs to get a little violent. He doesn't have time to go through puzzles. Time is of the essence at this moment, and he needs answers now. This gives the audience an example of what happens to a person when a loved one is in danger, and that's what we see with Sam. It's not until he reaches the museum and finds Max alive and well where he reverts back to his normal self. Max has finally been located, and all we need to do now is rescue him. In episode 4, Beyond the Alley of the Dolls, there is this moment early in the episode where we get the mind-reading playing cards, and when we read through Sam's mind a few times, we get this bit of dialogue.
Max is so powerful now, soon he won't even need a partner.
Now, it wasn't until recently when I started making this video where I put some thought into this bit of dialogue that I realized that up until this point, we don't really use Sam as much as we used to. As you progress through each episode, you'll start to notice that we will use Max a lot more than we use Sam. If you think about it, we wouldn't be able to solve a majority of these puzzles if it weren't for Max's psychic abilities. I mean, for the second half of the episode They Stole Max's Brain, Max is pretty much the brains in solving the puzzles for the episode while Sam is doing the heavy lifting. It's at this point where Sam is starting to feel like Max is outgrowing him, which is pretty sad. In the previous seasons, it is very rare for one to progress on their own without the use of the other's help. The majority of each episode heavily relies on their teamwork to overcome their obstacles. Max having psychic powers is something that is completely out of Sam's league. It was something that Sam would in no way be able to keep up with as Max got stronger with using his powers. He did have an important role in the beginning to help Max with using them, but eventually there would be a point where Max would no longer need his help anymore. Sam would eventually become overshadowed, and the only role he would have left to play is to become an NPC in this world. If Max had lived by the end of the season and we ended up getting a fourth season, it probably would have been something called like Max. In the final episode, The City That Dares Not Sleep, Sam is doing everything that he can to save Max. This is his final stand. He only has a few hours before Super Bowl unleashes the final imperative and blows Max up. Sam comes up with this plan to rescue Max by forming a team, getting rid of the dark dimensional matter, and confronting Max's superego. In the past season finales, we were always presented with the crisis of the world coming to an end because of the main villain. Through trials and tribulations, we would manage to get the upper hand and defeat the main villain, which would result in their death, and the episode would end on a happy note. I never really felt the stress of the situation with these seasons because I always knew that things were going to work out in the end. However, with the season 3 finale, you can't help feel this lingering sense of dread. With this episode, you actually feel like the stakes are raised because you have to put a stop to the villain in order to save the world. The thing is, though, is that this time Max is the villain, and it seems like the only option in order to save the world is to kill him. I felt really bad for Sam in this episode. He's acting like his normal self. He doesn't slip into his noir persona like before, but you do notice that there's something off about him. Like he's trying his best to put on a brave face and carry out the mission, but he's just moments away from breaking down. There are some moments where we see some of these cracks to this facade as he gets really worried or sentimental whenever he encounters Max.
Hey, Max, how's the weather up there? You crack me up, little buddy.
It appears that Max's tumor has become infected with dark matter.
But you can make it better, right? Without Max, I'd be just another grim loner, skulking through the seedy armpits of the city, assaulting crooks and assorted crook-like punks in a humorless, over-narrated fashion. Sure, it'd probably sell like granny panties in a nunnery, but would I be happy? Not really.
One thing that this episode does a really good job in highlighting is how alone Sam is. Max is no longer with him to help him with his case or provide some comic relief to ease the tension. You do have the Spores occasionally pop in to harass Sam as they try to get him to fall asleep, and to their own merit, they do provide some comic relief. But it's not really Max, so it just feels wrong. This episode serves as an example of what life would be like without Max. If Sam fails his mission, this is what he has to expect for the rest of his life. We do have some great characters join us on our mission like Paperweight, Norrington, and Sybil, and they offer a good amount of banter with Sam, but it's just not the same. It just feels so empty having to play through this episode without having Max by your side. It not only reminds Sam how important Max is to him, but to the player as well. Playing through this game for the first time, I couldn't help but get this feeling of hollowness inside of me. This episode is great, don't get me wrong, it's really fun to play. It just does a really good job in reminding us why we played the series in the first place, because of Sam and Max. You can't have one without the other, and I was really missing our little buddy. I remember how desperate I was to complete this episode and reach the end so I could get that happy ending that I thought I was going to receive. In almost every episode across each season, Sam has always been lucky when he was met with an obstacle to the case. He either had something in his inventory that he picked up earlier, or the item was usually within reach. Whatever it may be, Sam had always found a way to save the day, to save Max and the world. But unfortunately, that's not the case here. Sam has done everything he could to save Max. He went through every possible solution that he could find, and in the end, when he had nothing left to offer, he was still met with defeat. In the end, all that's left is to swim in the thoughts of what happened and what could have been. So now I would like to talk about past Max and what his purpose is to the ending. I think this is one of the most important scenes in the entire season because there's just so much to unpack with what's going on. After his moment of grieving for his lost friend, Sam is reunited with past Max. Sam, at first, is overjoyed, but then he asks where the past version of himself was. When I first saw this, I thought to myself, is there a way that we could actually save our version of Max? Is past Max going to take us to a different timeline and we'll reunite with past Sam and alter the events of our timeline? There was just so many questions that were raised as I was thinking, oh, are we going to be able to save present Max? But as it turns out, the past version of Sam had actually died due to similar events to the present timeline. Past Sam was actually the one who had psychic powers, which meant that in the end, we can assume that he had sacrificed himself to save the city. Then we get this moment where past Max says how horrible this event was, but he says it in a very jokingly manner.
Oh yeah, about that. We were on a case and you got turned into a giant monster with electromagnetic powers, so I kinda had to blow you up. It was horrible!
Sam, however, doesn't immediately respond to this. Instead, he takes a moment to himself to think this through, and past Max notices this and takes a moment for himself as well. We then get this very small moment of silence between the two. Sam is probably thinking, I really don't know how to respond to this. Am I really okay with this? With the expression we see from Max, he realizes that maybe he's going about this a bit too soon. These two characters have just suffered a great loss in their lives that has deeply affected them. From what we just saw a minute ago, Sam was this broken shell of himself walking through the city without a care in the world. And although we don't see this from Max, we can assume that he has also had this moment of grief. For the longest time, before the remaster for the Devil's Playhouse was released, I had always believed that Max would immediately kill Sam the moment he turned into a giant demon. Based on this bit of dialogue, I assumed that he never went through the same planning and preparations that Sam went through in order to save Max. I thought he would push a button to send a missile at Sam and blow him up without any hesitation, and laugh about it in that moment. But when you go to find the Nutrispecs in episode 1 and enter the code to open the keypad, you find a screwdriver and 2 Polaroids, and it's at this moment where you learn the truth. That Max actually did try to save Sam. He formed his own team, he turned the DeSoto into one of Sam's favorite foods, and everything after that plays out similarly to episode 5. This shows us that despite being the psychotic lagomorph who tends to shoot first and ask questions never, that when it comes to his friend, Max will do everything in his power to save him. Thanks to this new bit of lore, I can now believe that even though Max is trying to play it off that watching his friend die by being blown to bits was some sort of spectacle, deep down inside, Max is truly hurting just like Sam. When he tells Sam how horrible it was to watch him die in a jokingly manner, it's not that he doesn't care, it's that he's trying to move on. So when it gets to this part where Sam doesn't reciprocate this response, I think that Max is a little worried. He's worried that he might have stepped over a boundary a little too soon, and he's worried about what the next thing Sam will say. If Sam doesn't want to move on, then what does that mean for past Max? What's the next thing for him to do?
So, wanna stop some crimes?
Let's! Where do we start, pal?
I heard there's a new supervillain in town called the Banker. He's created a board game that kills.
And there's rumblings that the horrible Rat Queen has been summoning all her minions to her secret nest beneath the city, subsuming them into her blood-caked fur to form the unstoppable Uber-Rat, Empress of Slaughter.
Oh boy, I can subdue her with my acid-slicked whip-like tongue.
You don't have an acid-slicked whip-like tongue.
Oh, well, I can still drool on her till she begs me to stop.
You crack me up, little buddy.
After their moment of silence, Max asks Sam if he wants to go stop crimes, and Sam gladly accepts, and the episode ends with the two embarking on their next adventure. The two have gone through their stages of grief, and they had a moment to process the bitter truth to their losses. But once this small amount of time has passed, they are ready to move on and continue living their lives. Going back to the question, why did Max need to die? Couldn't the message of friendship still be established if Max had survived in the end? Well, probably, yeah, they could have. And once upon a time ago, this was an ending that I would have preferred. But now that I think about it, if they had gone with this ending, I believe that it would have been really cheap. It wouldn't have had as much of an impact on me if at the end, the Max from our timeline appeared in front of Sam and said something like, "Hey Sam, I managed to survive the explosion and return to my normal self. It's a miracle." I feel like if this was the ending we received, everything that was leading up to this ending would have been for nothing. I really have to give props to the people who worked on the season and decided to make the bold move to kill off one of the main characters. I really appreciate that they decided to incorporate some heavy topics such as loss in a series that is known to be very silly and doesn't always take itself so seriously. Instead of the characters simply brushing off these traumatic events like they were nothing and moving on to the next thing like we usually see them do, they actually react to personal losses and it affects them. It gives these characters a bit more depth. It gives them some humanity, and that's what makes this season so great. It does a great job of not only showing how these two mean to each other, but it also shows how much they mean to us. We've been with these guys since the beginning of season 1, and some of you have been with them longer than that, and by the time we reach the 3rd season, you should already have some sort of investment with these characters. When Max dies in the end, you should feel a little sad that you weren't able to save him. I'm starting to believe that the reason why this season has been stuck with me for so long, why I wasn't able to move on from it, was because I guess I didn't accept the fact that Max was dead. I always kept thinking that there would be a way to bring him back, or that there would be a 4th season and we would get reunited with him in some way. But for now, I've started to accept that Max is really dead. And the best thing to do is move on. And I think that's what this ending shows us with Sam. Sam has finally accepted the truth. He has finally moved on. He could spend the rest of his life thinking of ways to bring Max back or what he could have done, but I'm sure that if Max were around, he would want Sam to continue living his life. It's important that we see Sam grieve for the loss of his friend, but it's also important for us to see Sam move on and start healing from this trauma. And what better way to do that than to find someone who has been through the exact same trauma that he's been through? So before the remaster for the Devil's Playhouse was released, I had reached out to Skunkape Games and asked them 3 questions that I thought were very important. Question number 1. Out of all the games you could have chosen to remaster, why Sam & Max? Everyone at Skunkape has been fans of Sam & Max well before Telltale existed. Getting to work on Sam & Max games at Telltale was one part of why most of us ended up there in the early days, and we made them with an amazing team who ended up becoming a group of friends. As a result, the games are very close to our hearts. When Telltale closed, we realized we could have a chance to own a piece of our own work at the studio and use the tech advances of the last 10 to 15 years to go back and make them look and play better than ever, and turn them into something old fans could go back to with fresh eyes and new players could discover for the first time. Question number 2. What's next for Skunkape Games after the Devil's Playhouse has been released? We're still figuring that out. Question number 3. What does the future of Sam & Max look like? Sam & Max's future is, and has always been, in the hands of Steve Purcell. We don't know what he's got in store, but in the meantime, all of us hope you enjoyed the Devil's Playhouse. Well, for one thing, I, for one, definitely enjoyed the Devil's Playhouse remastered, and I'm sure so many people did as well, so bravo Skunkape Games, bravo. The second thing is that I hope that this team gets to create another game, whether it be a remaster from Telltale Games' archive or a brand new game. Whichever it may be, I'll be sure to play it. This team has a lot of talent and a lot of passion, and I think that's something that's very important when you're making video games. I'm not sure if anyone has ever watched the commentary videos for the Devil's Playhouse, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend watching these videos. There are a few videos for each episode, and you have a group of people who worked on the game sit down and talk about the roles in creating the game. These videos are so much fun to watch because it's pretty much a group of friends just having fun, sitting down and talking about the work that went into each episode for this season. You can tell that there's just so much love and care that went into the making of these 3 seasons, and it's very evident as to why it's loved by many fans. So I'm really hoping we'll see what the next chapter is for Skunkape Games. As for the future of Sam & Max, as Skunkape Games have stated, it's all in the hands of Steve Purcell. It would be great if we could get another season to play through, or if that's not possible, maybe a short miniseries, maybe something similar to the Flash Shorts Sam & Max Our Bewildering Universe. As long as we were getting new Sam & Max content, I would be one happy fan. But of course, if Steve Purcell doesn't have anything planned for Sam & Max at the moment, like maybe he just wants to take a break or is busy, I would respect his decision. Chances are that we won't be getting any Sam & Max content anytime soon. It might be 5 years, or 10 years, or even more than that until we get a new Sam & Max game. But I do have hope that somewhere down the line, we will be singing Sam & Max again soon. I have seen it happen where some video games that deserve a sequel go for this long period gap until the next installment is announced, and I believe that's what's going to happen with Sam & Max. So, it's not really a goodbye, it's more like see you soon and thanks for the good times. So now that we're at the end of the video, I just wanted to take this moment to give out a few thank yous. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Steve Purcell for bringing life to Sam & Max. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have these wonderful games to play through, a humorous television series, and a great series of comics to enjoy. So I want to say thank you for that. Thank you to the people who were with Telltale Games at the time when the Sam & Max series was first released in 2006. It's thanks to them that we ended up getting the original Sam & Max seasons, as well as many other great titles that were released that have become my favorites. Thank you to Skunkape Games for forming the team and bringing fans these wonderful remastered series. I remember the first season being announced during the COVID pandemic, and it was one of the greatest news during a grim time. And the following years, we ended up getting the remaining seasons remastered. Thank you for taking the time to answer my questions on social media, and also I would just like to say thank you so much for putting my name in the credits in the 3rd season. I was actually really surprised after I finished playing through the first episode to see my username in the credits, and honestly that's such a big honor. I consider it to be one of my biggest accomplishments for my YouTube career, so I just want to say thank you guys so much for that. That was incredibly sweet. And finally, I want to say thank you to everyone that has been watching the Sam & Max videos that I've been putting out. I started posting these playthroughs 8 years ago, and it's been a real fun journey. Out of all the games that I've uploaded for this channel, Sam & Max has definitely been one of my favorites. It's really fun getting to read the comments that are posted for these videos, whether it be someone's favorite moments from an episode, or someone telling me that I missed an interaction with a character. So, to anyone that has watched, liked, commented, or shared these videos, I just want to give you my biggest thanks. If it wasn't for you guys, these videos wouldn't be where they are right now, so thank you guys so much for that. But that's pretty much all I have for this video. Again, thank you guys so much for what you've done. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the videos that I'll be posting, and as I said before, please leave a comment if you liked this video essay or you had your own thoughts that you wanted to share. I would be more than happy to read through them. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys, but thanks again, and bye-bye.